The next one is a little bit different. It is The Heartist by Galvo, and this is a self-released album at the end of September last year. It's 14 tracks and 53 minutes, roughly, so close to an hour long. We were sent this by Galvo, a singer-songwriter from Dublin, Ireland, and he didn't give us much background in the email other than it's my debut and it's self-funded from working in factories. That's pretty much what he said in his email, but he did provide all sorts of links and info to take a look at. His website bio talks about channeling some dark energy from difficult periods in his life, like being homeless, living in his car, sort of channeling that into his music. This album's not available on Spotify or most of the other streaming services at the moment, but it is available on Bandcamp to buy, and the whole visual album is on YouTube for free. So all the music, vocals, guitars, banjo, buzuko, organ, bells, and some piano is performed by Galvo. I don't need to pretend I know what all those instruments are. And all of the drums and percussion are by a guy called Neil Woods. So just press and play on this. We get the first track, The Weight, and there's an immediate sense of grandeur, whether it's the plucked strings, the rousing piano, the layered vocals, or the dramatic landscapes of the accompanying visuals. The only way I can really describe the visuals is as a series of paintings of landscapes and cityscapes, or sometimes faces or characters. And it's almost like stop motion animation in a way, that there's a sort of stutter in the way the frames and the visuals kind of zoom in. It's almost like they're always traveling forward, and they kind of morph frame by frame. So sometimes the changes are subtle, like somebody's face sort of morphs a little bit, or a face can morph into a mask or things like that. And then other times it's more dramatic, like just big changes, sudden pop-ins or pop-outs of things. And it's a really interesting art style. I can't pretend to understand if there's a sort of narrative thread going along with this. I think it would take an entire podcast in itself to try and unpack all of that. The vocals we get remind me a little bit of MGMT is what I want to say. Oh. And I think some of the instrumentals remind me of the Me Rex album that we covered, Mega Bear, as well.
Yeah, I'll give you that, because I felt that as well. Yeah, I think that's a pretty apt description. The first song, The Weight, I think was maybe originally released back in 2018, so I think it's kind of, although this is his kind of debut album, I think, there's maybe been a few songs out there in the ether, and he's kind of pulled them all together in this album. And, you kind of mentioned kind of a lot of kind of different instruments there, and I felt, for my money, it was immediately kind of beautifully evocative, tender, melancholic. You mentioned that, this kind of idea of grandeur. Similarly, I kind of said that it feels like a kind of really kind of spacious kind of number. And I would say that's the case for all of the songs on this album, with maybe a few exceptions. I would say that immediately put me in mind of Empty Country's self-titled debut album that we kind of previously covered.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
See the likeness. There's kind of smacks of kind of Sega Ross, I would say, there.
Yes.
But Fleet Foxes.
Yeah.
Sufjan Stevens. Bit of Raging Heart. Remember we kind of previously covered, I think, maybe their debut album, Broken Spectre. I would also say that there's a bit of Silver Sun Pickups in amongst there as well. Yeah,
I think that's probably fair to say. Yeah, it's a very atmospheric album, and there's that kind of that sort of runs through the entire album. So it's one of these ones that kind of just sort of washes over you. It's one of these ones you kind of absorb as a whole, rather than necessarily picking out individual tracks, I would say. I mean, you can do that, but like, The Weight is a really great intro to the album. Take, which is later in the album, that reminded me a lot of Sigur Rós, just in all the little subtle touches of instrumentation. I got a little bit of a Elton John's Tiny Dancer vibe from the track before that, maybe, which is a bit of a weird one, just something in the melody there. And there's a great line on that that says, maybe my heart's been beaten down a little too much. Maybe I've hit the ground and I don't like the concrete's touch. There's lots of nice little memorable lyrics like that across the album. At that point in the visuals, it's all very sort of, it depicts people in the foreground looking at colourful fireworks in the background. On some of the other songs, you've got black and white visuals that are zooming in on these crumbling skulls.
Yeah,
you've got these stunning vistas of crashing oceans with solitary figures like standing on the waves or standing on mountaintops. You've got people sitting on the roofs of crumbling cityscapes. There's just all sorts of cool visuals. I think the visuals and the music all works quite well together.
I would agree with you though. It's hard. I mean, there has been quite a few. I think there's been 4 singles in total kind of released from the album. So The Wait, as we said, kind of been one of them. These Waves, Gracious, and Getting Better. But I'd be in agreement with yourself that it's an album that you kind of experience and it kind of washes over you, which I think could be quite divisive for some people. You know, I really enjoyed it though. You know, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's, while it's got that kind of atmospheric kind of sort of washes over you kind of vibe, I think there's enough going on throughout to keep you invested and keep you from getting bored. And when you combine that with the visuals as well, it's a very engrossing experience. There's lots of variety. There's some of the songs have got drilling drums and crooning guitars. There's twinkling pianos. There's lots of great vocal melodies. And there's a lot of kind of building up of layers and building up to sort of crescendos as well. And you get those moments where the visuals are the waves crashing, and that kind of ties up with the intensity of the instrumentals and the vocals at times as well. It's a really interesting album.
What did you rate it?
I've given it a 9 out of 10 again. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's an experience. You could certainly listen to this without the visuals, but I think they are a big part of it, and they're visually stunning. And you can just sit back and let the whole thing wash over you. And yes, there are bits that sound quite samey, but they kind of suit the whole kind of theme and tone of the album really well. So it never feels like a chore to listen to, or at least to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're correct. Like, I think that there's definitely enough in there to kind of keep you entertained and keep you listening. You know, there's a bit of country flavour to a few of the songs, but I mean, I kind of even got like a kind of surf vibe off one of the tracks as well. So like in a name tag called Neve, I've kind of mentioned that there'd been a bit of a kind of surfer vibe to it, like kind of rollicking drum beat and kind of piano stabs and flourishes, which, you know, I really quite enjoyed. I was really quite impressed by the vocals as well, because, you know, before I kind of did any of the kind of research, I just kind of listened to it from start to finish. And yeah, I was quite surprised to find out that there wasn't any kind of female vocalist on the albums. It was entirely himself. So that in itself, you know, it's just hugely ambitious and, you know, impressive.
Yeah, definitely. The same with the vocals at first. You know, first time listening to The Wait, I thought they were female vocals. So it was strange to find out that it was a male. Yeah, it's I suppose it's quite a difficult album to describe the sound of, but it is sort of, you know, you've mentioned a few bands. It's that sort of indie folk, a bit of country, and kind of a hard one to describe, I suppose.
But a good listen.
But yes, a good listen.
I would agree, man. Like I gave it like an 8 or 9. As well, very autumnal feel. I would say like that. That's
you made me want to mention Ton there just by the autumnal kind of. But I don't know if that's just because you said autumnal, and that's like the first band I go to when someone says, "What's an album you listen to in the autumn?"
I think it's fair to liken this to some of Tongue's songs.
Good. Well, a very unusual just presentation, I suppose. just given that it is a visual album, and I would definitely recommend that you go and watch it on YouTube. And then if you like it, go and buy it. Go and buy it from Bandcamp. So yeah, that was the Heartist, a visual album from Galvo.
We split the skies. We just don't belong to this. These words are in my bed. Leave the light on. Maybe my heart's been beating down a little too much. This is it. This is always the way. This is it, and I hear you say, I can't believe in you. Could've turned the world out, could've made it spin around. Don't give it up, you know. No, I won't give it up. Don't wanna live with no regrets. I tried my very best again, trying to get better.
You'll share man's greatest thrill.
Many men have tried and failed. They tried and